President Goodluck Jonathan leaves for Ouagadougou today as member of ECOWAS mediation delegation to Burkina Faso.
As Council of State meeting ends in Abuja, federal government resolves to intensify efforts on the release of abducted Chibok school girls.
Health authorities in Nigeria set an end-of-year target to achieve vaccination of all under 5 children.
And dealing with incessant jailbreaks in the country.
Sometime in 2012, now that's about 2 years ago, gunmen invaded and sacked and freed inmates at the federal prisons Kotunkarfe in Kogi State, north-central Nigeria. Out of over 130 occupants of the prison, reports say 27 of them were the only convicts, some of them on the death row. Others were awaiting trial. Now, the same prison again on Sunday, this year, of course, came under heavy bombardment by gunmen suspected to be insurgents.
During the latest attack, an inmate was killed and 144 other prisoners escaped. However, 15 of the inmates are said to have voluntarily returned to the prison yard.
Now, this infamous Kotunkarfe prison was said to have been constructed in 1896 with a capacity of about 50 inmates. In what many have termed the routine when such incidents occur, government officials led by the Interior Minister and Kogi State Governor, Captain Idris Wada, have visited the prison. Now, Comrade Moro will be joining us on the program today to tell us what he saw and what could have caused the second jailbreak in Kotunkarfe in less than 2 years.
Of course, we expect other stakeholders to also be on set to speak on how the country can overcome the incidents of frequent jailbreaks.
And another issue of global interest this time that will form part of our conversation on Good Morning Nigeria this Wednesday is the development in Burkina Faso, Ouagadougou. As you may have heard, the African Union, as well as other international agencies, but the African Union has given a 2-week ultimatum to the military junta in Burkina Faso to hand over power to a civilian authority. Also, President Goodluck Jonathan is scheduled to leave for Burkina Faso today, I guess, Kingsley?
That's correct, yes. That was one of the headlines we read earlier.
Okay.
That's right,
Now,
yes.
he will be going as a member of ECOWAS delegation on mediation assignment. Our international analysts will be sharing their views on what we should be expecting in that country in the next 2 weeks and after. Now, that is the focus of our conversation this morning. Like I said, on Good Morning Nigeria GMN, it's reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA, the largest network in Africa. I am Claire Adelabu Abdulrazak, thanking you again for joining us.
Okay, and I'm Kingsley Osadolo. It's my pleasure also in welcoming you to the program. In the course of the program, there will be business news, there will be newspaper review, sports, and arts and entertainment. But of course, we're going over now to the newsroom where Ronke Kolawole is waiting to give us the news at 7. Ronke.
Thank you, Kingsley, and welcome to the news. President Goodluck Jonathan travels to Ouagadougou today as a member of the 3-man delegation of heads of state and government raised by the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, to facilitate the rapid resolution of the current political crisis in Burkina Faso. Other members of the delegation of ECOWAS leaders are President Macky Sall of Senegal and President John Mahama of Ghana, who is the current chairman of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government. During their one-day visit to Ouagadougou, President Jonathan and his Ghanaian and Senegalese counterparts are expected to meet with Burkina Faso's interim head of state, Lieutenant Colonel Isaac Zida, opposition leaders, members of the civil society, and other political stakeholders in the country. President Jonathan will be accompanied by the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Dr. Nuruddin Mohammed, and some of his principal aides and advisors. As efforts are intensified on the release of the Chibok schoolgirls, the federal government says it has not entered into any agreement with the Boko Haram group while discussions are still on. This was revealed at the end of the meeting of the Council of State held at the Presidential Villa, Abuja. The council meeting, which was attended by former heads of states, former chief judges and some state governors, revealed and condemned in strong terms some issues of discriminatory practices in some states and directed the committee headed by Governor Babangida Aliyu of Niger State to present its report with proffered solution.
To go back and beef up and then rejig his report and come back with solutions that could even be presented to the National Assembly in the case, in some of the incidents that may require legislation, so that we can come up with legislation that will unite Nigeria and stop all the discriminatory practices.
On the ongoing security challenge in some parts of the country, especially the purported negotiation with the Boko Haram on the release of Chibok girls by the National Security Advisor, also came into scrutiny.
The Republic of Chad was made, and that some persons who acted on behalf of Boko Haram and who claimed to have authority also had discussions with them, and then some Nigerian officials were with them. And then, of course, no agreement has been reached yet. It's just that the press may probably misunderstood what was reported. The discussions are ongoing. What came out from the National Security Advisor's briefing was the fact that the president will do everything possible to ensure the release of those young girls and to ensure the protection of lives and properties. And that will include dialogue where you can have the people to dialogue with, because you cannot dialogue with people who are faceless. And therefore, any opportunity must be explored to ensure that peace returns to the region.
The council also discussed the issue of community policing and funding of the police.
State assemblies need to pass a resolution authorizing the use of the deduction of the funds from the federation account, and also the ESCO of every state must grant approval for such deductions to be made. Once that is done, every state in the federation will contribute 1% of their statutory allocations monthly towards a fund which will fund the Nigeria Police.
Meanwhile, the Police Council at a separate meeting confirmed the appointment of Suleiman Abba as Substantive Inspector General of Police, having found him competent and advised the President to ratify.
Confident under the leadership of the new Inspector General of Police that the police will go through radical reform and will become a far more competent police force that Nigerians can trust and respect.
President Goodluck Jonathan has nominated Oku Joseph Unana for appointment as Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Deputy Senate President Ike Ekweremadu read the President's letter to that effect on the floor in line with the provisions of CBN Act 2007.
I hope that the usual tradition of the Distinguished Senate of the Federal Republic, this will receive expeditious consideration.
Meanwhile, in view of the controversies trailing the Speaker of House of Representatives' defection from the PDP to APC, House Leader Monica Akonde Adiola has explained that it was the traditional role of the leader to move the motion to adjourn the House. She was reacting to the claims by the APC that two principal officers of the PDP moved for adjournment, even with the Speaker announcing his movement to the APC.
So 9 of us were present at the meeting, and the Speaker said this is a one-item agenda meeting, we agreed that, okay, 4th, members should go and work on their tickets first, that the House will adjourn for the first 2 weeks, let members conclude all the reports in the various committees, and the following 2 weeks will be for oversight function towards the budget. While we were in the chambers, if you check our order paper, you'll see that there's a particular time for announcements, usually. And after the announcement, we went into the order of the day, and nothing was said about whether the speaker was moving or not. At the meeting we had, nothing was said about that.
Talking politics now, the People's Democratic Party has affirmed its commitment towards ensuring that all its aspirants submitting forms have a level playing ground during the primaries. The National Organizing Secretary of the party, Alhaji Abubakar Mustafa, stated this while receiving the forms from some of the aspirants at the PDP Secretariat in Abuja. Abubakar Mustafa said the party will ensure that there is transparency in its primaries.
We expect people to abide by the decision of people, because the decision of people invariably becomes the decision of God.
This is coming barely 2 weeks to the end of the sale of the nomination form. We now go on commercial break.
Shopee has ensured the reconstruction of the Abuja Lokoja Road and the East-West Road in Port Harcourt.
The standard gauge rail tracks from Abuja to Kaduna and Lagos to Kano indicates that our trains are coming back.
The second Niger Bridge in the southeast and the Loko Oweto Bridge in the north central are in progress, thanks to Shopee.
Shopee's mass transit program has made transportation easier for Nigerians.
Shopee has rehabilitated over 1,000 health centers across Nigeria.
Shopee has provided mama kits to pregnant women, and polio is on the verge of eradication.
Shopee has also ensured the provision of social amenities, and through its various training programs for young people, guarantees a better future.
Shopee, delivering service with integrity.
Welcome back. Health authorities in the country have set the end-of-year target to achieve what would seem to be the ultimate target in the health sector. They hope to succeed in the vaccination of all children in the country under 0 to 5 years, as well as surpass the 3 million mark of pregnant women vaccinated during the last May-June national immunization round.
As a federal government, we are committed to saving the lives of women and children in this country.
Communication activities and mobilization has already commenced across the country. Even in this meeting, we are getting a feedback as regards progress that is being made in terms of mobilizing the public.
Yola, the Adamawa state capital, is experiencing a sudden departure of a large number of people in the midst of influx of internally displaced persons. This is as a result of activities of insurgents that cuts across some northern parts of the state. Panicking residents are fleeing the state on the assumption that the insurgents are advancing to take over the entire state, including the state capital, Yola. It is reported that some of the fleeing persons are stranded at various motor parks in the state because they cannot afford transport fares.
I am leaving to Gombe because we have been displaced. We've been driven out of our towns, we've been driven out of our homes. People are being killed, children are being misplaced. No food, no money, no transport for everybody.
I'm leaving because there's no security. There's disturbance, everybody is moving out. I came all the way from Uba. I stopped at Mubi. Then from Mubi, this thing happened again. I have to move.
Meanwhile, the Adamawa State Police Command has arrested 14 suspects for being in possession of stolen vehicles, kidnapping and robbery. Briefing newsmen in Yola, the state capital, Police Commissioner Gabriel Adaji said the breakthrough is a result of relentless effort of the command to bring to book those terrorizing the state. That is the news. We now go back to Kingsley and Claire for the continuation of Good Morning Nigeria.
Okay, thank you very much there, Ronke Kolawole, for the news this morning. This is Good Morning Nigeria, coming to you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Business news comes up after the break.
This message is brought to you courtesy Transformation Ambassadors of Nigeria. TAN for One Vision, Nigeria.
A cup of jig in the water will get school uniforms whiter, and it is the tough stain fighter that will get your whites much brighter. Just Chickens! Pot puree and lemon. Just Chickens! Hey, you better go get it! Now available in lemon and pot puree fragrances, the newest and freshest way to chickens.
I need a great deal, the best price I can get. That's why I shop on Jumia.
Quality you can trust. You can count on us. We make shopping easier. Cash on delivery. When you shop on Jumia, when the rain shine.
Get the incredible Angel smartphones starting from 13,999 naira at jumia.com.ng. Jumia, the online shop you can trust.
The Dettol and Ministry of Health team is visiting schools to teach children how to protect themselves from diseases.
Do you know what germs are? They are tiny, harmful, living things that you pick up from dirty surfaces. These germs can make you ill and prevent you from doing all the things you like to do with friends. That's why you need to fight them by washing your hands regularly with Dettol soap.
Mom, today we learned how to fight germs with Dettol soap.
All right, moving on to business news now. Stakeholders at the Nigerian Stock Exchange have listed corporate governance lapses as one of the major problems affecting the nation's business sector. Now, here is details of all these and other business reports with Sheun Ogunloye.
Let's talk business now. The immediate past president of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, Aliko Dangote, has listed corporate governance lapses as the major problem affecting the nation's growth. Dangote believes that if the issues surrounding corporate governance lapses are tackled, especially in the public sector and quoted companies, it would boost the nation's foreign direct investment and attract more local investors' participation in the capital markets. Speaking at the launch of the NSC's Corporate Governance Rating System, CGRS, in partnership with the Convention on Business Integrity, CBI, held in Lagos, Dangote submitted that there was need for the public sector to entrench high level of corporate governance in their operations to fortify the economy against any future economic crisis. The Chief Executive Officer of the NSC, Oscar Onyema, in a speech explained that the CGRS was designed to rate companies listed on the exchange based on their corporate governance and anti-corruption culture, thereby improving the overall perception of and trust in Nigeria's capital markets and business practices. Still on the nation's bourse, transactions on National Association of Securities Dealers, NASD, over-the-counter OTC are now exempt from value-added tax for the next 5 years. The VAT exemption is effective immediately on all commissions applicable to capital market transactions which are earned on traded values of shares and payable to the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, NASD, and Central Security Clearing System, CSCS. This implies a 6% drop in the cost of transactions and puts more value in the hands of the investors. According to the association, the reduction in cost improves the attractiveness of OTC market and may have a positive effect on the level of secondary market activity in the future. The association expressed that the OTC market creates visibility for unlisted stocks by providing investors with a means to find the real value of their investment as opposed to guesswork, and by making vital trade statistics available to issuers which may guide their future corporate actions. And on the foreign scene, Australia's trade deficits more than doubled to 2.26 billion Australian dollar in September. Data showed that exports rose just 1% in the month, while imports were up to 6% as Australia bought in more fuel. The deficit, a balance of goods and services, widened a lot more than market expectation of 1.95 billion Australian dollar and compared to a revised deficit of 1.013 billion Australian dollar in July. Falling prices of key commodities like iron ore is being blamed for the jump. Export earnings in Australia, home to some of the world's biggest miners like BHP Billiton and Rio Tinto, have been impacted by the slumping prices. The price of iron ore is down 40% this year, while thermal coal prices are hovering near 5-year lows of $63 Australian dollar per ton on oversupply in the market and slower demand from China. The two commodities are Australia's top 2 exports. And that concludes the business package this morning. Thanks for watching.
Okay, thank you very much there, Sheung, for the business package. Up next for us is a newspaper review. Bayo Atoyebi, Good Morning Nigeria newspaper reviewer, is right here with us in the studios. Bayo, welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Well, of course, the papers we have, I have 6 and Claire has 5. We hope we can go through all of them. The stories are not particularly heartwarming. The Guardian is our first newspaper, and the photograph on the front page of the Guardian is captioned as follows: internally displaced persons flee Mubi to Mehab following Boko Haram's invasion and capture of Mubi yesterday. That reminds you of what you used to see somewhere in Central Africa, Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, the headline says, hundreds flee Mubi as Boko Haram takes over. And there are so many writers to that story. Group renames town Madinatul Islam. And Shatima alerts military to terrorists' planned attack. Shatima, of course, is the governor of Borno State. Potiskum's death toll rises to 82, and insurgents burn PDP secretariat, kill soldiers and others. Okupe faults Atiku on violence. And also on the front page of the Guardian, there, just above the name flag, roadmap to sustainable crude oil refining, and how coloration of products can stop smuggling, and government spends 600 billion naira on subsidy while owing 200 billion naira. Now, the Guardian has a number of news notes there. Court declines to issue bench warrant against Coca-Cola. Details on page 4. Also to be found on page 11, United Nations urges end to impunity over crimes against journalists. And Fayose set to probe Fayemi. Details on page 77. And how Tambuwal lured us into his trap by Reps leader. Details are to be found on page 5. Now, we also take the Nigerian pilot. The Nigerian pilot has as its lead story Kika 2015. PDP senators and reps demand automatic tickets. 2 riders to that headline. Aggrieved lawmakers may boycott budget debate, and fresh legal bid to unseat Muazu begins. Muazu is chairman of PDP, national chairman of PDP. APC governors and Buhari shunned Council of State meeting. And the writer says, Suleiman Abba confirmed substantive Inspector General of Police. Just below the name flag of the Nigerian pilot is this story. Defection. Tambuwal deceived us. That's the House leader. Details to be found on page 6. And also promotional stories on the front page right there of the Nigerian pilot. Obasanjo visits IBB, Hawks Atiku at airport. Details to be found on page 8. FG6 cuts nod to arrest Coca-Cola officials. And Army promotes first female paratrooper, as well as 432 officers. 20th year dead in Kwara auto crash. Details are on page 16. And Kogi jailbreak, 129 inmates still missing. And Claire, let me just take this. Let me take National Mirror very quickly. National Mirror is our next paper. Now, the same story, the same headline virtually. Congress, PDP senators move against Jonathan and threaten to shut down government, and aggrieved Ondo leaders storm Abuja. That's the lead story on the front page of the National Mirror. But above that, there's a business story. AMCON retires 976 billion naira bonds and exits public debt market. And monthly fuel subsidy bill drops 37% to 1.2 billion. Monthly fuel subsidy bill drops 37% to 1.2 billion naira. Al Makura to resettle Nasarawa crisis victims. Details are to be found on page 7. Abba confirmed IGP, that we read that already. And Tambuwal, APC governors boycott Council of State meeting. Details to be found on page 4. We also have there on the front page of National Mirror, death toll in Potiskum suicide bomb blast, hits 82, and Shetima, that's the governor of Borno now, laments as elites flee Borno. Claire?
Okay, Kingsley, I think I'll just quickly stick on to the front page stories. We really don't have, heartwarming stories this morning. I start off with the Newswatch Times, and it leads with the political story. Automatic tickets, PDP senators on war path with Jonathan. That's how it leads its front page story. And it writes with forced adjournment of session. And a picture story there trending on the front page. The pictures you see are those of former President Olusegun Obasanjo, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, and former Special Assistant to Obasanjo Senator Andy Uba, all at Minna International Airport in Niger State yesterday. And below that, you have Buhari, Tambuwal, APC governors shown Council of States meeting. It's on page 4, that's details of it. And protesting workers lock foreign ministries gates, hold minister others hostage. Details are also on page 4. And the story just above the masthead there, Boko Haram loots military hardware in Mubi Barrack and bombs Gombe police station, LG headquarters, killed 12 killed. Mopo prevents takeover of Ashaka cement complex. That's the front page of Newswatch Times. And leadership leads with at presidential declaration, only big ideas can change Nigeria. And this is coming from Nda Isaiah. And it writes with, we will back whoever emerges candidate of our party, Atiku. Amechi Fayemi Akume salute Nda Isaiah's courage, integrity. And there you have former President Atiku, of course, in a handshake with Nda Isaiah. Boko Haram attacks Gombe, kills 5 soldiers, take over Ashaka cement. Details are on page 4. And 2015 budget under threat as PDP senators decry governor's manipulation. Details are on page 5. And Vanguard leads with Boko Haram renames occupied Mubi town. Says Mubi now to be called Madinatul Islam. Once against holding elections, vows to capture entire state. And insurgents on rampage in Gombe attack police station. That's the lead story on the front page of the Vanguard. And just above that, below the masthead, you find Tambuwal PDP House leaders buckle. Details are on page 8. And fuel tanker explosion kills 20 in Kwara State. Details on page 6. And trending at the foot, at the bottom of the paper, the synagogue court declines to stop coroner's inquest on page 10. 2015 budget in danger as crude drops to $82. Details are on page 9. That's the front page of the Vanguard. Daily Sun leads with Boko Haram overruns Gombe village, schools killed as insurgents attack Nafada. Death toll in Yobe, suicide strike rises to 82. And just on the right column there, senators plot against Jonathan, compare president scenes threaten economy shutdown. Okay, just below that, Chibok girls, no ceasefire pact, says Akpabio. I'm not helpless over Mubi attack. This is coming from CDS. Buhari APC governors absent at Council of States meeting. And just boldly captioned there at the bottom of the paper, Obasanjo visits IBB in Minna. And finally, let's take the front page of the Union newspaper. And it leads also with the story on Boko Haram. We are pained, CDS laments as insurgents rename Mubi. Details are on page 2. And above that, above the masthead, Atiku is unpatriotic. This is coming from presidency. Inflation down to 8%. And this is also from the minister, finance minister.
Okay, Claire, just before you come in, let me just take 2 stories.
Okay.
2 stories from The Nation, but these are inside pages of The Nation. Page 4 of The Nation and page 5. Page 4 says, loss of my hometown to Boko Haram, no big deal, says Chief of Defense Staff. And that's loss of my hometown to Boko Haram, no big deal, says Chief of Defense Staff. That's on page 4 of The Nation. And also on page 5 of The Nation, page 5 of The Nation is a story that says, Air Force missing jets wreckage sighted in Adamawa. You recall, Bayo, the plane went down sometime in September. And as Claire read, the front page of the Daily Trust says, no ceasefire with Boko Haram. That's according to the Council of State. That's at the foot of the front page of Daily Trust. Governors' bids to install successors face opposition. That's the lead story for Daily Trust. And Muslim cleric, 4 others killed in Nafada attack. I'm sorry about that. But if you find some other human interest stories on page 7 of The Nation. But let me just read this, page 7 of The Nation, City Beat. The headline says, my husband married me to make money. And that's he was seeking for a divorce. He said, a month after we got married, he took me to a herbalist. I was given a black soap from a calabash, while my husband's soap was in a white container. Each time I use the soap as instructed, my late mother is always fighting me in my sleep. So she's calling for divorce by law.
Well, that is some relief from this tension and these gloomy stories we have been hearing. It's very sad that, again, Nafada, the local government headquarters in Gombe, had come under attack. A cleric who was with his friends, about 10 of them, have been murdered in their home. This is coming just only after last Friday. There was a bomb attack at the same Gombe in the motor park. The previous week, it was at Bauchi. The signal now is that the insurgents are trying to at least create the impression that they have control and they are not contained in a specific place. However, the reaction by the CDS about whether Vintim, his hometown, has been taken, points to the perspective of our colleagues, the media, that tend to emphasize that even the CDS hometown has been taken. And the CDS is categorically saying that he's concerned about any town taken in Nigeria is optimus. It doesn't have to be specific, whether it is his hometown or Enugu or anywhere else in Nigeria. The 3rd Armored Brigade, whose jurisdiction is for that area, has been given marching orders to flush out the insurgents. You recall that the National Council of State met, and at their meeting, I think it was late in September, they announced that by October, there were every hope that the insurgency would have come to an end. And I think yesterday's meeting was to update on the follow of that. The issue of ceasefire is now almost as dead as how it started. Originally, there was a negotiation going on about the ceasefire, Apparently, some renegade members of the group have objected to the ceasefire, and from what we are seeing now, it looks as if the ceasefire has gone under coup. Now, the collapsed synagogue building, there was a case filed by one barrister Ogungbije who sought to stop the coroner from sitting, and particularly for inviting the pastor in charge of the church that had a synagogue of all nations. And Justice Ibrahim Buba of the Federal High Court Lagos has ruled that since the pastor is not in custody and his church is not joined, but he has been invited there in person, he sees no reason why he should be precluded from attending the coroner's invitation, which is fixed for November 5th. However, the case about this will be decided by November 16th. There are alarms about the economy, and the coordinating minister has brought out the statistics again. But you know, statistics sometimes might look very bright, but for the ordinary citizen, they always say that we want to see the food on the table. But the statistics show that our foreign reserve is about 38 billion, and it is enough to sustain our economy for at least 5 months, which is the international benchmark. And the intention is to build it up to about 9 months. As at now, inflation, which used to be about 12%, has come down to about 8%. So anytime from now, we should be able to see the impact on dropping of prices. But basic essential commodities prices have been going up a little bit, and I think it will take some time before they will begin to come down. But the encouraging news is that fiscal deficit is 1% of GDP, and it is said to be among one of the best in the world. And when you look at the continental outlook, Nigeria has 77% of the gross domestic product for the West African sub-region, and about 25% for the whole continent of Africa. So Nigeria's economy, which has been observed to be almost first in Africa, is critically determining the economic peace on the continent. There was also concern about the slump in crude oil prices. There was a drop of about 2.6%. The benchmark for US crude has dropped to $76.79, while our Brent crude has come to about $82.36. The concerns are being addressed, and it is hoped that OPEC and all those concerned will work on it. But critically, Saudi Arabia holds a very strong position, and their own benchmark is about 85. And if the world oil price drops below 82, it will even begin to affect Saudi Arabia. And so I think OPEC will then have to move. Ebola, there is concern in Sierra Leone because of the concerted effort to tackle Ebola. There's been improvement in Liberia. So in Sierra Leone too, what they did was to say people should remain at home so that they will be observed for the periods to clear Ebola. But because they are at home, they are not able to get their food. And trucks that move food around the country are also not able to move. So people are now forced to go out of quarantine, and that poses a lot of danger. The World Food Organization declared that they had to send about 450,000 tons of food to that country in October, but apparently it has run out.
No, but Bayo, I mean, you're talking about Ebola and the humanitarian challenges. You saw the front page photograph of The Guardian, and even some of the stories that we read in the course of our bulletin. I think that we are also facing some humanitarian crisis with regard to internally displaced persons in the Northeast.
Yes.
I mean, if people are evacuating Yola, which is the capital of Adamawa, persons have also they have fled Mubi and other locations. I think it's important that the appropriate agencies, respond to the pressures that the receiving states, which of course will involve maybe Gombe. Gombe is also under attack.
Yes.
I mean, some parts of Gombe, Bauchi, of course, and Plateau. I think this is a cause for some very urgent response.
Yes, I think the movement by the internally displaced persons is from Mubi towards Yola. Yola is seen to be relatively safe for the insurgents, and so they are heading there. I agree with you that, yes, the NEMA and all the agencies that are supposed to be concerned about internally displaced persons should get their acts together. However, the population of internally displaced persons are increasing by the day. Gombe was quite magnanimous. They set up a very huge camp for internally displaced persons from the theater of the war. But Gombe now has also come under attack. There's some also in Bauchi. But with the situation now, there are those who had migrated from Goza to Uba. When Uba came under attack, many of them moved to Mubi. From Mubi now, they've gone to Yola, and some of them are in Gombe. But it is a dire situation, and I think the instructions from the National Council of State yesterday that the armed forces should intensify effort to flush them out is quite instructive. But all our hearts must go out to our competitors who are now facing this plight, and everything must be done to help them urgently.
Indeed, Bayo Atoyebe, thank you very much for coming to review our newspapers. Thank you. Bayo Atoyebe is a GMN's newspaper reviewer, and we will be having him again tomorrow. Now, moving on to our point of conversation this morning, the increasing incidence of jailbreak in Nigeria is becoming a worrisome phenomenon. Now, various prisons, including those in Lagos, that's talking about the Kirikiri Maximum Prison, Kaduna, Akure, have all experienced one form of attack or the other. But Kotonkarfe Federal Medium Security Prison in Kogi State in Nigeria's north central have been the worst hit. It has recorded 2 devastating incidents, and on both occasions, inmates were set free. Now, the attacks are said to have been carried out by suspected insurgents. Now, in this report, Usman Mohammed Minjibur takes a look at this development and what can be done probably to avert future occurrences.
Suspected terrorists on Sunday night attacked the Kotonkarfe Federal Medium Security Prison. The gunmen set free all 145 inmates and vandalized the record office. 26 of the prisoners were said to have been convicted of various crimes, while 119 were awaiting trial for robbery, culpable homicide, among other crimes. But 12 of them later returned, while 1 died from bullet wound. This is the second time in 2 years Kotonkarfe prison was breached. In 2012, 119 awaiting trial inmates were also freed by the attackers, and many never returned. The question many are asking is why the prison been incessantly breached. Many in the community attribute the breach to proximity of the prison to highways.
The proximity of the prison yard to the federal highway is a disadvantage even to the staff of the prison and the prisoner itself and the entire community.
Appeal to the controller and at the same time appeal to the federal government that this yard should be moved to the permanent site.
Others also put the blame on the failure to try those awaiting trial, thereby congesting the facility. This is because the Kotonkarfe prison, which was established during colonial era in 1896, was designed with the capacity to house only 50 inmates. Minister of Interior Patrick Abamoro, who was in Kotonkarfe prison to ascertain the level of damage, promised to rebuild the facility and beef up security around it.
That is why, since the first attack, the prison service, the Minister of Interior through the prison service, re-awarded the contract for the completion of medium prison here in Kotonkarfe. I was here last week, even without knowing that this accident was going to occur. I came here to look up the level of progress of the work, and I'm here today. I think there is a marked improvement on the level of work that has been done here. I have also directed that, given the level of work that has been carried out here already, and given the circumstances in which we found ourselves, I've given an ultimatum of 2 weeks.
All right, you just listened to the Minister of Interior, Mr. Abamoro. And incidentally, he's our first guest that will be taking this morning to discuss the question of the incessant jailbreaks in the country. So my pleasure now to welcome the Honorable Minister of Interior, Mr. Abba Moro, to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Honorable Minister, there was a clip from that report. You just visited the Kotu Karfe prison. Second incident in as many years. What's going on?
Well, I think in the circumstances, we are getting an unfair share of the challenge of insecurity that we have in this country. The first incident was occasioned by the attack on that prison by some hoodlums, some gunmen suspected to be members of the insurgents, who at that time suspected that some of their members who were arrested and incarcerated were being holed up there, which of course proved to be false in the end. This time around, we still have a similar scenario where about 20 gunmen in a commando-like style swooped on the prison again, forcefully entered the prison using explosives, made an attempt on the main fence of the prison, were unsuccessful, and then used the administrative block to penetrate the prison. And unfortunately, forcefully released 144 of the 145 inmates. In the process of confrontation, one of the inmates unfortunately died.
Well, Honorable Minister, obviously, I mean, your facility, let's say the prison facility, was attacked in this case, but any average person would assume that it took quite some time to plan this attack. What level of collaboration do you have with intelligence agencies?
Well, we have been working actually with all agencies of security within the country, and especially where our facilities are located. In this instant case, before the attack in 2012 and now, we had the complement of mobile policemen and state security services men. Yesterday, I was informed that we have 8 mobile policemen stationed there to assist the prison warders, and we had 4 armed guards who were supposed to be on duty and who said they were on duty. But I think the unfortunate thing is that this thing comes usually in surprises, you know, and they come in the least time that maybe people will expect. But having said that, generally we share intelligence with ourselves. But unfortunately, on this occasion, we never had any intelligence of any impending attack on the prison. Because the general attitude that we developed since the attack in 2012 was to relocate the prison. Like I told you then and now, we had a prison facility, medium prison facility, that was under construction, whose contract was awarded in 1981, that was abandoned. And because of this incident, we had to, and of course the incidence of congestion in our prisons, we now decided to, of the 47 prisons whose contracts were awarded in 1981 but abandoned, to resuscitate all of them. You know, recently we commissioned that of Nnewi. That of Kotun Karfe is under construction. And last week, I just went down to look at the extent of work that was done and encouraged the contractors to complete the work on time. That was just last week, before this incident occurred on, I think it was Tuesday or
Sunday.
so. Yeah, on Sunday. Yeah. So now I have gone back to the place again. Based on my surprise visit of last week, I saw that some remarkable job had been done in the construction work. The fence is almost completed, almost 80% completed. The construction work in the administration and the cell blocks had literally reached 80% completion. And so we agreed amongst ourselves, and I gave them that ultimatum that within 2 weeks, the whole construction work in that place, all resources should be mobilized to complete them. And they agreed with me.
Comrade Moro,
yeah.
With the extent of devastation inflicted on that facility, and you have also told us that the attack appeared to have been done in a commando, fashion. Now, what do you think might be, okay, can you confirm to us if it was carried out by insurgents? And if so, what do you think might be the motive?
Well, at the moment, I cannot put my fingers on the characters that attacked the place. I cannot say specifically now to be sure that they are insurgents, but I can say that, of course, they are gunmen that went to the place. But whether they are armed robbers or whether they are armed robbers who suspect that their members are there, or they are insurgents who suspect that their members are there, or whether it was deliberately contrived as part of the orchestrated insurgency to attack our government facilities to make a statement, I wouldn't be able to say. Because I only have at my disposal now an interim report and the on-the-spot assessment that I made yesterday. A comprehensive report is being awaited, and it is only then that I can be able to say specifically the characters that attacked our prison.
Could it have been, you know, masterminded by, from within, by some of the inmates? Do you think, does anything give that impression?
At the moment, I wouldn't say yes. Because I went there yesterday, and quite frankly, most of the persons that ran away from the prison, by the confession of some of the people that have returned, ran away as a result of the trauma, as a result of the incessant gunfire, and not knowing actually what was happening. And so they scampered for safety. So I would not say, if it is a normal jailbreak, escape from within, I can say yes, it's masterminded by the inmates themselves. But when it has to do with attacks from outside, using explosives to find their way in, I think we'll be very careful here in placing our fingers on what actually is the motive, because we don't want to send wrong signals to the Nigerian public as to what actually transpired unless we actually know what transpired. And that we will certainly do.
Okay, these visits, Honorable Minister, with due respect, because we know that even when the 2012 incident, you know, there were visits by government officials, we keep going there, and then we keep pointing our fingers back, you know, at the congestion, the state of the facilities, and all that. And we have started construction of new, you know, facilities to accommodate. Why are we dragging our foot in terms of, you know, taking proactive action to prevent? This is not the first time. Lagos Kirikiri prison has similar experience.
Claire, let me say this.
Has it not become routine?
I think that is an unfair question, because I have just told you that last week, without knowing that there was going to be an attack, I was in Kotun Karfi. I was in Kotun Karfi to ensure that that job was completed. Nobody knew, the contractors didn't know, the prison authority didn't even know that I was going there. I was there.
But before this construction, of course, in the immediate, what is necessary, what can be done in the immediate, before these new facilities are up? Those people are human beings. They are entitled to certain rights, food, good food, decent places. Isn't there anything you can do even before these facilities are put in place?
Well, I have told you now that I have given orders that within 2 weeks. I don't know how immediate again that this job can be done. 2 weeks, complete this assignment. I told you before that Mr. President had approved an increase in the feeding allowance for inmates for 2015, which we're including now.
Are they given? Are they receiving it? Is there any monitoring?
Why are they not receiving it? Why can they not receive it? If Mr. President had approved an allowance for these people, it's not for them to receive, it's for them to increase their welfare, to increase the ration, to increase the quality of the ration and the quantity of the ration. And that is exactly what we're doing.
Well, Honorable Minister, there is, I think, an issue which I regard as perhaps more fundamental, namely the location of prisons on the exclusive legislative list. Why should we continue to retain prisons on the exclusive legislative list? This burden that we are discussing now is one that could be shared by 36 other state governments, that could be shared by 774 local governments and council and area councils. Why do we still have it on the exclusive list?
Kingsley, if you don't forget, we had discussed this matter before.
I raised it. I wasn't satisfied with your response.
You raised it, and yes. I answered you.
I wasn't satisfied with your response, sir.
Well, you are not satisfied in the direction of what? Because I told you that the issue of the exclusivity of the prisons in the Constitution is a constitutional matter. The prisons, the National Assembly is in the process of amending the Constitution. The Nigerian Prison Authority has submitted a draft bill to replace the 1963 Act under which we are operating now. Nobody is averse to an amendment of the Constitution to put the prison on a concurrent list if it will solve our problem. But at the moment, the law that we have places the prison service in the exclusive list. And so it's an issue that me as a minister will not have any control over. I can only make proposals, and proposals, like I said, are before the National Assembly. Until that amendment is done, I'm a humble public servant implementing the laws of the Federation within the best that I can do in the circumstances. And that's exactly what we're doing.
There was a curious point you raised about prison projects having been abandoned since 1981.
Yeah.
That's about 33 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, of course, I know that it's part of the policy of President Goodluck Jonathan's administration to take on previously abandoned projects and complete them.
Yeah.
Two matters that arise from this. Why were those projects abandoned? And secondly, are those designs for 1981, obviously they could have been designed in the 70s, are they suitable for our present circumstances? So that you don't go ahead to complete a project that will not suit our present circumstances.
No, 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 no.
Yes.
There is no change in circumstance when it comes to prison spaces. There are internationally accepted prison standards for prison construction. We have, if you have 80-bed space, that is an internationally accepted standard. If you have a medium prison system, it's an internationally accepted standard. And their designs are prototype across the country over the years. So what we are constructing now is not any antiquated construction that will not meet the time that we are in now. What we will do to improve the circumstances is because we are having large numbers of persons now in our prisons. And so we can only increase the spaces. But the designs are the same all over the world, just like whatever you have. In our own circumstance, for instance, instead of one bed, sometimes we put double bunks just to create space for everybody, because everybody must have a bed.
How many of such facilities is being constructed at the moment?
At the moment, we are constructing 7. In Gashua, in Yola, in Otukpo, in Ibadan, in, what do you call the place now? Auchi, I can't remember exactly all of them now, but we have 7 of them that we have taken up now to finish, because out of the 47 that were awarded in 1981, 19 were completely abandoned.
Why?
Well, I can't explain, but sometimes budgetary constraints, lack of payment to the contractors will lead to a complete abandonment. In a way, for instance, we have to re-award. Cotton Carrefour, we have to re-award. Gashua, the contractor is continuing, you know. So where we found the contractor, some of the contractors have died. And so we have to reward them. But I can assure you that those ones that we have embarked on now and the few that we are contemplating in 2015 will definitely be completed within this, the life of this administration.
Honorable Minister, let's pursue this point again. If you were in this country in 1981 and you could see the level of development even in the FCT by 1981, now the traditional ruler in Kotokarfe cited the location of the Kotokarfe medium security prison close to the federal highway as perhaps one of the attractions for the frequent attacks on that facility. I'm asking, amongst the ones that you have taken over to complete now, will you also consider, for instance, nearness to a federal highway as a potential security risk, if not hazard?
Yeah, let me tell you that since I came on board, we have had agreement and arrangements with state governments to relocate our prisons. Okay. We are in the process of relocating the Enugu prison because we think that where it is now is not appropriate. Accident had occurred in that place. And we went, collaborated with the state government of Enugu. We're in the process of relocating. Only matter of site now had become a problem. I was in Kano last year, discussed with the state governor. Where we have our central prison in Kano now is on the highway. And we are in discussion with the state government for allocation of land to relocate. Ikoyi Prison, we have signed agreement with Lagos State Government since I assumed office to relocate our prison to a day. I have visited the site that they have allocated to us, and the state government was supposed to complete the construction for us to hand over the old prison to them to relocate to that prison. At the moment, we are in discussion with Akwa Ibom State Government. Our prison in Abak is directly on the road that they are constructing now, and we have agreed with the Akwa Ibom State Government to demolish the place, build a new prison out of the highway. So we are not unconscious of these prisons that were constructed way back in the colonial times, in the 1986, 1834, and all that. These were prisons that were in place before most of us that are talking now were born. And so we inherited these problems. But gradually, I can tell you that within the life of this administration, we have made conscious efforts to rectify some of the problems that confront us in the prison system.
I do not have the exact figure. In fact, I do not know what percentage of the budget that, that was allocated to the prisons. But I do know from all indications that this is one area that has been poorly funded. Are you comfortable with the funding for the prison?
Comfort is out of the question. And we are making very conscious efforts to address the problem. Mr. President, for instance, has approved the release of funds for the construction of 200 beds each for Kefi and Suleja for this year. And the contracts have been awarded for this year. And so, within the constraints of the limit of resources, quite frankly, we are putting a lot of effort because the prison congestion and the attacks on our prisons and the jailbreaks that are occurring certainly present a sore point in our administration of the prison system. And everybody, we are conscious of it and efforts are being made. But don't forget that sometimes, in spite of your intentions, the constraints of resources presents a very huge challenge, but we're addressing it.
How can we prevent a third, God forbid, jailbreak, even on Cotton Carrefour? What are you doing to prevent that?
I said yesterday that if we had relocated to this new prison, the vulnerability of our prison to that successful attack will be highly reduced, if not eliminated. Because given the circumstances in which we found ourselves, the designs of those prisons, the fencing system have been done in such a manner that it will be very, very difficult for anybody to gain access into the place. And so all we can do now is to hurry up, finish the construction of some of these prisons, and of course beef up our security, appeal more, because we don't have all the personnel and even the arms to confront this situation that we found ourselves in. So we can only now continue to apply to the police and to the army, especially in vulnerable sites, to provide complementary security service so that we can contain the situation. And luckily they are cooperating. The state governments are also cooperating.
Yeah. Honorable Minister, we know that today is a busy day for you. You're going to have to go to the Federal Executive Council. Yeah. So we'll be releasing you presently. But just one last question. You've given a 2-week deadline to the contractor who is handling the Cotton Carrefour prison. I'm wondering, I don't know, I've not been there. I don't know what the stage of construction is. You think that's a reasonable deadline? To have the facilities, if you need to have your plumbing, your M&E, light fittings, appropriate plumbing, getting water, so that the inmates don't get there, and then you have a riot on your hands.
If I didn't assess the situation correctly, yes, I wouldn't give that deadline. And I assure you, in 2 weeks, I'll report back to you.
Very well. Honorable Minister for Interior, Mr. Abba Moro, would like to thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very
Kingsley,
much.
He's a comrade. So we've been speaking with Comrade Abba Moro.
You know, Kingsley is transforming my name because of the transformation that is going on in the prison.
well, Comrade Abba Moro, I tell you, you raised the issue of Comrade. In Zimbabwe, after they had their independence in 1980, and Robert Mugabe became prime minister, later became president, every other person, if you were greeting each other, it was comrade, comrade, comrade. But 15 years later, if you greeted anybody comrade, they would take a look at you like this and say, what does that mean? Yeah. Because Mugabe had abandoned comradeship. and hardship had come upon the people of Zimbabwe. But we'll return your comrade.
I will not be a Mugabe. I will not be a Mugabe.
Exactly. All right, Honorable Minister, Comrade Abamoro, we'll let you go at this point to attend to other very important issues. Thank you for sharing your perspective.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, this is Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a break at this moment.
Your favorite Dettol 70-gram pack for 100 Naira. And now available, the Super Family Pack for 170 Naira only. Whichever Dettol soap you choose, you get maximum protection against germs every day.
From the east down to the west, up to the north and back to the south. Nigeria don't transform now because of good luck. Our people don't they smile low. Our country don't better. Oh yeah, make una follow me, come see. Waiting good luck they do. Oh yeah, make una follow me, come see. Waiting good luck they do. Oh yeah, make una follow me, come see. Waiting good luck they do. Oh yeah, make una follow me, come see. Waiting good luck they do. Agricultural sector, petroleum product. Oh yeah, make una follow me, come see. Waiting good luck they do. Railway system, good roads and aviation. Oh yeah, make una follow me, come see. Waiting good luck they do. Healthcare systems and youth empowerment. Oh yeah, make una follow me, come see. Waiting good luck they give us light, give us food, give us house, give us school. With good luck, Jonathan, our country don't better. Oh hey.
This message is brought to you courtesy Transformation Ambassadors of Nigeria. TAN for One Vision, Nigeria.
You are watching NTA, Nigerian Television Authority. For more information and news updates, visit our website at www.nta.ng, or you can follow us on Twitter at NTA News Now, or you can like us on Facebook at NTA Network News. Stay connected on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/NTA News Online. Watch our live stream at www.nta.ng/live. NTA, you can't beat the rich.
I need a great deal, the best price I can get. That's why I shop on Jumia.
Quality you can trust. You can count on us. We make shopping easier. Nation delivery. When you shop on Jumia, when the rain or shine.
Get the incredible Angel smartphones starting from 13,999 Naira at jumia.com.ng. Jumia, the online shop you can trust.
The Dettol and Ministry of Health team is visiting schools to teach children how to protect themselves from diseases.
Do you know what germs are? They are tiny, harmful, living things that you pick up from dirty surfaces. These germs can make you ill and prevent you from doing all the things you like to do with friends. That's why you need to fight them by washing your hands regularly with Dettol soap.
Mom, today we learned how to fight germs with Dettol soap.
This is Good Morning Nigeria, coming to you live on the network service of the NTA. We are at this time discussing the frequent jailbreaks in our country. And we've already had the Minister of the Interior, Comrade Abamoro, who is dashed off now to the Federal Executive Council meeting. But joining us at this time is Professor Etonibi Alemika. He's a professor of criminology from the University of Jos. Prof, would like to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. Good morning.
Okay. Again, we were discussing a moment ago with the Minister of the Interior, and he gave his explanations as to what has been done, what happened, and so on and so forth. From your perspective, what does a jailbreak point to? What does it indicate?
Well, once you manage a prison, a jailbreak is to be expected for various reasons. People who are incarcerated want freedom. Freedom is a very valuable asset. And of course, there are interested people outside who want people released. So in terms of episode, in terms of incidents, jailbreak is a global phenomenon that you find in different countries. The risk of jailbreak is there, of course, heightened when you have certain categories of prisoners in prisons across the world. In Latin America, for example, because of the role of drug dealers and the possibility that a lot of such people are in prison, you have a high risk of prison riot as well as jailbreak. In Nigeria, for example, we also expect, given the insurgency, given the high volume of armed robbers, that the syndicate outside will seek, especially the Baron and those who organize those, the foot soldier that we often arrest, because I believe we don't get to arrest the main sponsors and entrepreneurs. We should recognize that jailbreak will be a regular phenomenon of our institution. So it's therefore, for me, not surprising that we have jailbreak. It is our own perpetual inability to deal with the matter, because, I mean, in the last decade, we've had so many jailbreak. We've had so many panels, as you know, established to study them, and we end the same way, maybe not surprisingly, because we really don't know why we run prisons.
But I'm wondering again, why, you have told us, you know, sometimes why people may want to, but why are our prisons susceptible to jailbreaks? Why do our prisons fall in, you know, give in most of the time?
Well, there are several reasons why that is the case. I think the Honorable Minister mentioned some of them. There are structural reasons. Some of them are very weak. Cotton Karfi prison was an NA prison under Northern Nigeria, and wasn't even a federal prison, as at that time was, you know, it was a prison.
The native authority.
Yes, a prison. And I think in 1981, like you said, I think about 47, 48 prisons were planned, and they were never thoroughly executed. But given the development of Cotton Karfi, the prison had become, you know, an institution within the town. As a matter of fact, it's not too far away from the person you showed, the Ohimego of Cotton Karfi. It's not far away. Incidentally, it's also not far away from the house of the late director of prison, as they were then called, now Controller General of Prison. Of course, the prison predated him. It wasn't that he took that to his village. I think the prison encouraged him to join prison. You know, so it's weak. If you, for example, the entire Kogi state, all the prisons there were native authority prisons. In the whole of the Western and Central Senatorial District, the three prisons there, that's Cotton Karfi, Okene, and Kaba, they were NA prisons. And they are very, you know, structurally weak. The only modern one, which was part of the 48, is one located on, you know, in a community called Okebukon-Ibono area of the state. Again, it's being used now, but it's incomplete in terms of original design. So that's one. Structurally, they are structurally weak. Secondly, of course, is the quality of security around them. I think, again, in the last decade, the prison has tried to establish an armed guard. That is their own internal security system. Again, I don't think the number is large enough to do that. But I think fundamentally is also the prisons are congested. So congestion is always one of the major causes of prison riot and prison jailbreak, because if it's overcrowded, the ability to exercise surveillance is then diminished, because your attention is diverted. Worse still, if the composition is such that you have a high mix, a large proportion of awaiting trial and convicted inmates, because awaiting trials are not subject to the usual treatment because they are deemed innocent in spite of their incarceration. So there are a lot of mix of factors that are responsible. But sometimes also I think the staff are not motivated, they are not properly trained in terms of classification of who should go where.
Well, Prof, at the beginning you said that we appeared not to know why we are running prisons. Yeah. Why do you say this? That what will be your counterpoint?
Yeah. if I want to throw it back to you, I'll say, show me any document in Nigeria that tells us that this is the philosophy that underline why we run prison. There are, if you want to punish people, if you want to control crime, there are about 5, 6 major aims. You either punish people in order to deter them, you either punish people because you want to exact retribution, you either punish them because you want to train, reform them, or you want to defend society, which is called social defense, or you want to incapacitate by simply saying, if I put you in prison, you cannot commit crime during your term of... So we don't have any of this stated anywhere that this is the reason we are running prison. Because if you have a goal, then you are able to develop your institution to accomplish that goal. All I know that the prison is used to do today is simply used as warehousing of fortunate people.
That's a serious point, but which takes us to the next issue. I raised this question with the Minister of Interior, and he said, of course, there are all kinds of proposals, policy proposals in the works. Namely, why should we continue to have prisons on the exclusive legislative list? Why should it be the business of the federal government? We have seen policing. Policing is gradually being decentralized. And even what the decision that was taken yesterday at the Council of State meeting would show that state governments will also be contributing towards the funding of the police, equipment of the police, and so on and so forth. Couldn't we also now begin some measure of decentralization of the ownership and control of prisons and prison yards?
You've raised an important point, and the interesting thing is when the governors or even Nigerians are discussing decentralization, they want police decentralized but not prison. And I can understand why governors should not, if I were a governor, I would not advocate decentralization of prison. You know why? 80 to 90% of people in prison are put there as a result of legislation passed by the state. And yet they are not paying for the cost of their own legislation. If that were the case, for example, if each state were to be responsible for taking care of the prison and enforcing as a part of enforcement of the laws that they have enacted, I think they will be more sensitive. But that is just one angle to it. Maybe we need to understand how they became federalized. I just told you that Kotun Karfi prison was an NA prison. NA prison. First, of course, was the evolution of those prisons. You know, when we try to solve a problem, we just look for the less imaginative resolution. So in 1966, when Aguiyi Ironsi became the head of state, he set up a panel. That's why we also have a federalized police. He set up a panel to look at the two institutions which politicians have complained were used against the opposition, and see whether we should continue with a dual police and prison system. Of course, before the report was completed, he died, and I think Gobiri was the permanent secretary that headed the panel, and it was submitted to Gowon. So that was how both, the two were merged, both the federal and the local prison. I think what we need to do is for national law to regulate the way the two institutions should function. I think there is there are need for a national guidance. What should be the minimum standard for establishing a prison? Once you can do that, and how it should be managed. In US, for example, there are jurisdictions where a citizen can go to court and say this prison does not meet minimum standard and it should therefore be closed. And if you get that judgment, it means the state has to decide, do we want to release armed robbers to the street, or do we need to upgrade the prison in order to ensure that we incarcerate people? So I agree that we should begin to think seriously. Incidentally, I was the chairman of the Prison Reform Committee, Presidential Prison Reform Committee in 2006. And we recommended that indeed we should classify the prison. For example, we should have a remand. Like some of the prison people are complaining, you could use them for remand for minor offenders and all those to treat them, and then have and then have a new prison. They don't have to be destroyed or abandoned as we may think. So Of course, that report, till today, it came very close to the end of the tenure of General Obasanjo, and therefore the white paper was not. I think I wrote to the present government. They couldn't even find the report. I gave them another photocopy. They ran around it for a week or two, and of course, nothing happened thereafter.
Okay.
The fact is 2006 report is already activated by the dynamics of prison management, that it is not even useful today. But if we had taken that report then, we would be thinking of advancing over it now.
No, but there are key markers in the report that obviously will not be outdated.
Yes, yes. For example, we have a principle. We have some philosophy for training staff. We will also probably, some of the recommendation about location of certain judicial courts close to the prison, so that all the argument we can't move them around, and all the, there are key reports.
Okay. Well,
okay.
That's much we can take.
That's what we can take. Professor Tanibi Lemeka, a professor of criminology from the University of Jos. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. Kingsley, we're moving on to developments, of course, in Burkina Faso. And we take a short break before we move on to that conversation. Stay with us.
Oh, yes, we love our greatest leader. Nigerians love you. Oh, yes, we do. Good luck, Jonathan. Love you. Oh, yes, we do. Good Lord Jonathan. For you feel our heartbeats, provide for us all our basic needs. You give to us all the good Lord that we share, transforming Nigeria from backward to forward ever, forward ever. Yeah, transforming Nigeria from backward to forward ever, forward ever.
Honor to whom it is due. Good luck, Abella Jonathan. You are the best president of Nigeria. This message is brought to you courtesy of Transformation Ambassadors of Nigeria. Dan.
Add a cup of jig in the water, we'll get school uniforms whiter, and it is the tough stain fighter that will get your whites much brighter. Just Chickens! Pot puree and lemon. Just Chickens! Hey, you better go get it! Now available in lemon and pot puree fragrances, the newest and freshest way to chickens.
The Dettol and Ministry of Health team is visiting schools to teach children how to protect themselves from diseases.
Do you know what germs are? They are tiny, harmful, living things that you pick up from dirty surfaces. These germs can make you ill and prevent you from doing all the things you like to do with friends. That's why you need to fight them by washing your hands regularly with Dettol soap.
Mom, today we learned how to fight germs with Dettol soap.
All right, welcome back now. Let's look at developments in Burkina Faso. Of course, Kingsley has that right up.
Well, that's correct, Leb. The political crisis that has seen to the ouster of Burkina Faso President Blaise Compaoré appears to have continued unabated. Hundreds of thousands of protesters furious at plans to extend President Blaise Compaoré's 27-year rule massed on the streets of Ouagadougou last Thursday. And some of them set up, raised the parliament and other public buildings. On Friday, Compaoré announced his resignation following the violent protests. And under Burkina Faso's constitution, the Speaker of Parliament was supposed to step in as interim head of state following the president's resignation. Instead, the army named the second in command of the Presidential Guard, Lieutenant Colonel Isaac Zida, as the head of the Transitional Authority. But of course, before he was named as head of the Transitional Authority, the army chief had stepped into the shoes of the president. Now, the power grab has continued to infuriate Burkinabes. The African Union and other international organizations are responding. The AU has given the military in Burkina Faso 2 weeks to hand over power to a civilian administration. The AU is also calling for sanctions on Burkina Faso should the armed forces fail to comply with the ultimatum.
That's right, Kingsley. Yeah. We have joined us here in the studio in Abuja, Nigeria's capital city, Professor Chudi Wazurike. He is an international affairs analyst and also a member of the House of Representatives. We'll also be joined from the Lagos Network Center, Dr. Osita Obu of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. Dr. Osita, thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Nigerians.
Okay, back to Abuja here, where we have Professor Chudi Wazurike. Prof, thank you for joining us. Now, the development in Burkina Faso, the man in charge now, the military leader, Lieutenant Colonel Zida, has said that what has happened is not a coup, it's an insurrection. But again, we'll see, you know, the ousting of Blaise Compaoré, and then we heard the announcement of the, you know, the head of the military, and then sudden takeover by his deputy. What, from your point of view, how do you term what has happened?
Well, this is a phenomenon we've seen in African affairs quite a bit in the past half century. There are all kinds of scenarios. Clearly, there are two processes at play. One is clearly the political stalemate that led to the abuse of the provisions of Article 37 in the Burkinabe Constitution. That particular article is a section that speaks to the need for term limits, 2 term limits. And the President Compaoré tried to violate that. So there's street action, there's political action. Then there is the internal action, the palace coup, led by Zida, Colonel Isaac Zida, and a whole range of other people. Essentially, they want to maintain the fundamentals of the regime. Otherwise, they could easily have gone to the Constitutional Court. They do have a Constitutional Court. They could easily have invoked Article 37. They clearly could have even agreed with Compaoré himself, who in resigning said that within 90 days there will be new elections and so on. The current strongman is a familiar African wannabe, so to say, somebody who has other things up his sleeves if he's left. So very clearly there are two forces in contention. That of the Chief of Staff is part of it, but I don't think it's as important as it is.
Okay, Prof. Let's get back to Lagos, and I must apologize, Professor Osita Obu, for using bringing you as a doctor, and of course you are Professor Osita Abu, if I'm correct. Thank you. Now, Colonel Zida has said that this is not a coup, and has gone on to make some pronouncements. He has called on the international community, he has called on Africa, he has called on the ECOWAS sub-region to understand the situation and support the people of Burkina Faso at this time of their difficult, trials. Is this a statement in keeping with, a coup situation?
Yeah, thank you very much. I wouldn't think that the military stepping in right now in Burkina Faso is a coup situation. I think it's just a situation in which you can say that nature abhors a vacuum. A vacuum was created and something needed to be done quickly before the situation gets out of hand. I want to believe that the military in Burkina Faso, they are there very temporarily, pending when either with the consent of the people or the civil society or the international community, they decide on the constitution of the transitional government, as the case may be, or when next elections can be held. So I wouldn't blame the military in Burkina Faso for stepping in very quickly to contain the situation. For now, I wouldn't blame them.
There is a constitution. That country has been run, under a constitution which has made provision, for takeover of government in the absence of the president.
I heard that, that is ordinarily one would have expected the process after the resignation of President Blaise Compaoré. One would have expected that very quickly that would have been done. But at the same time, we have to be careful here because you do not know the forces that are playing out in Burkina Faso. Whether really what will emanate from that particular process will be acceptable to the people or to certain segments of the country. So we have to be very careful here. But the only way probably where I will lay some blame on the military is the fact that they appear not to have been had a very common view and common position on the issue, with the fact that one general came up, General Toure came up to announce he was taking over, and then the military later on came up with Lieutenant Colonel Zida as their preferred person or transitional leader. So the military needed to quickly put his house in order while they wait for the next step in the process. But like I said, nature abhors a vacuum, and for some time Burkina Faso has been a stabilizer in that particular region, helping to mediate other conflicts around the area and even the incursions of terrorists in that particular part of Africa. So it's in everybody's interest that Burkina Faso is quickly brought back to stability. So we are happy that other multilateral agencies like ECOWAS, the AU, and some other interested stakeholders have come in a way they have given an ultimatum to the government, the military government that has just stepped in, to quickly do something within 2 weeks and hand over power to a civilian transitional government. So we are hoping that the Burkinabes will put their heads together and quickly find a solution to this. I also understand that our president has just left for Burkina Faso on a mediatory role. I hope that with the intervention of our president, I think the Senegalese president too, that something quickly can be done to stabilize that particular country. Not a very rich country, have a few economic resources, but generally the people have been groveling under poverty for some time. And I think the Burkinabes were simply tired of seeing the face of Blaise Compaoré, who had been in power for 27 years and was scheming, which was what we nearly had in the country some years ago, and was scheming to have the constitution amended in such a way that he can also stand for election in 2015. The people were simply tired of that. I think that is what has happened in Burkina Faso. Yeah, thank you.
It appears to me, Professor Ogbo, if you just listen into the remarks I'm about to make and the question I'm going to ask, because we also have Professor Chudi Waziriki right here with us at the Abuja headquarters. If we are looking for an appropriate label for the events in Burkina Faso, it would appear to me that we had first a revolution, a popular uprising, followed now by a coup. And it's the after effect of the coup that we are dealing with. There was a revolution that forced the president to resign, and that caused, of course, a power vacuum, the one that Professor Agbo has referred to, and that vacuum has now been seized by the military, which is a coup. But the question I would like to ask is, all of this appeared almost in the life of a country in a split second. Syria has been grappling to bring down their leader. We have a civil war. It took so many months for Libyans to get rid of Muammar Gaddafi. Ben Ali of Tunisia fled, and after a while, of course, during the Arab Spring I'm referring to, it took quite a while. But in Burkina Faso, it seemed to have happened all in a flash. What are we seeing here?
Well, we're looking at the fact that the maturity rate, the political maturity rates of the African states really has come some distance since 1960s. You know, this is what is often called the process of the second liberation. You know, the first liberation was getting independence, and of course a mess was made of it. And the second liberation for the 1990s, when constitutional regimes came into being, began to stress the whole question of institutions. And what has happened in the case of Burkina Faso is that the institutions somehow or the other held the parliament as well as the constitutional court, as well as the emphasis on that particular Article 37 on term limits, suggests that people understand what the country is all about. Now, in terms of the swiftness with which the regime fell, it speaks to its own lack of legitimacy. Some of the other regimes you mentioned have some sort of political base. They've been the product of so many years and decades of political maneuvering. Whereas Blaise Compaoré is a fairly controversial figure despite his peacemaking efforts. Remember that he was the person who overthrew Thomas Sankara. Yes, in 1987. He was part of the original coup in 1983 and then did away with Sankara. And then a few years later actually executed the other 4 who were members of the original team and so on. And he's hung on to power. So essentially, there's something they say Burkina Faso, too much is too much. They essentially believe that this particular ruler, if he's left unchecked, will continue. So that's the subtext.
Okay, Prof, the two props now. Now, if we look at AU has come out to make a categorical statement. It has given, you know, the leadership, military leadership in Burkina Faso 2 weeks ultimatum. Now, the U.S., of course, has condemned military intervention in Burkina Faso. But I'm told that in keeping with the U.S. laws, certain immediate actions are usually taken in cases like this where military, forcefully takes over, a government. And that is some form of withdrawal of relationships, yes. Military relationships are done. But it hasn't, the U.S. has not done that. What we hear is encouragement of a return to civilian, rule. Might that have anything to do with the fact that Colonel Zida have had some sort of, military trainings, wine and dine with U.S.?
Well, I'm not sure Professor Abu will have something to say about this. I don't know. Reality is that almost all the top military officers in Africa have had some U.S. as well as European experience and so on. That could be part of it. But I think that the reason why we're struggling with whether this is a coup, whether this is an interim arrangement, whether this is really part of a process that is unfolding, is likely because every actor in this scenario has said this is not a coup. Compaoré said he's stepping down and that the elections will be organized within 90 days. The General Touré said no, he's coming here to organize elections, and even Colonel Zida said that within a few weeks, a few months and so on. So it's a fairly, it is more of an interim situation. And, but all those American sanctions, which is really what they are, suspension of relations, sanctions, withdrawal and cancellation of several things. And remember that Burkina Faso, as Professor Abu said, is a fairly poor country and highly dependent on foreign aid. It will hurt in the end, but it's also wise not to slam those things maybe in the first few days. As Kingsley, what you said is also important. This is one of the swiftest uprisings with consequential results. But that should not surprise you. Other long-lasted African dictatorships, and there are 4 in particular you have to watch. What is about to unfold in Zimbabwe? What is about to unfold in Angola? What will unfold in
Uganda?
Uganda,
exactly.
Yeah.
It's begun since 86.
Exactly. Yes. Sudan. These are people who have really overstayed their welcome. And the greatest revolution in the African political evolution in recent years is the whole question of term limits. In the case of Compaoré, he did himself in. People were willing to wait him out until 2015.
Next year. Yes.
Until next year.
Yes.
He's been meant to go since 2000. Through all kinds of maneuvers, he got himself elected to a 5-year term again, and yet another one, until the 7 years, and he was still going. So people just said enough, as it is.
Okay, Professor Abu at the Lagos Network Center. Let's take this very quickly in terms of effectiveness of multilateral pressure. The AU has a standard policy now, namely that no man in uniform, no head of state in uniform will be welcome to their summits. And on the west coast of Africa, at some point, we saw it, there was no man in uniform that was in charge of any state, a state in capital now. Are we likely to see this are we likely to see this resonate with the current interim leadership in Burkina Faso to persuade them that this would be a futile cause if they were to try to dig in?
Thank you very much, and I also thank Professor Wazuike for the expositions he has said, which is actually my position. Yes, the AU and other multilateral agencies in recent times have taken it very seriously about military men in uniform coming to their meetings, etc., etc. As a matter of fact, this position has been very well articulated in the Constitutive Act of the African Union. And I think especially Article 4H following, which said that AU looks with disdain at any takeover of governments in any country in Africa. Even a further protocol in 2003 also said that in situations in which there is illegitimate takeover of government, the AU views it seriously and usually takes actions in form of sanctions, as the case may be, one of which is not allowing such people, military people who take over governments to, appear at their meetings. So yes, in terms of sanctions, in terms of actions that the AU may take or other multilateral agencies may take in concession, it is possible. So that's probably why the AU gave the Lieutenant Colonel Zida about 2 weeks to arrange something and make sure that power returns back to civilians, as the case may be. So yes, the AU could bite if the situation demands.
Okay, Professor Osita Abu, we'd like to thank you for sharing your perspective with us from the Lagos Network Center, and Professor Abu is of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. Thank you. I'm back here in Abuja. A final question for Professor Uwazurike. Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan is a member of the mediation delegation from ECOWAS. Might they also be pushing for a 2-week ultimatum,
Yes, I expect President Jonathan to buy into that. I was very pleased to know that the EU is not sitting on its hands, and that President Malaki, President Mahama of Ghana, Macky Sall of Senegal, the President of Ghana, as well as our own their President, on top of this. I hope that, I think 2 weeks is not unreasonable. If they can resolve the larger issues, but still, one has to stress institutions. There are firm institutions in Burkina Faso that Zida should not ignore. There is a parliament, even though the building is damaged, it's still very much intact.
But the military purported to have dissolved parliament, which was part of the coup anyway.
Which is part of the coup, and again, it's something that they probably should not do. Yes. Because part of the danger is always dissolving the People's Assembly. Precisely. Eventually, you need the People's Assembly to get the pulse of the people, as it were. There's a constitutional court. They could refer to that. There are all kinds of mechanisms. And I think the important question is to look at this, as Kingsley, you said, more as an interim sort of measure. Popular uprising leading to an interim coup, interim administration, whatever, but no more than 2 weeks. Let's go.
All right, Professor Chude Uwazurike, thank you very much for coming.
Thanks,
of course, Prof is an international affairs analyst also and a member of the Federal House of Representatives. And now we have more on the foreign scene, and Yemi Uyeyemi has the details.
Thank you and welcome to the Foreign News. China says it will continue to enhance anti-corruption efforts with Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation APEC members. Since the establishment of APEC Anti-Corruption Work Group in 2005, China has signed treaties with 8 countries, including Australia, Thailand, and Russia, in judicial assistance and extradition. On October 25, Australian Federal Police confirmed that the agency is cooperating with the Chinese authorities in hunting down corrupt Chinese officials who fled the country and settled in Australia. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Hua Chunying said China hopes to cooperate with Australia and other relevant countries to chase fugitives and illegal gains and fight against corruption. Leaders from across the Asia-Pacific region will gather in Beijing for the APEC meetings to discuss many major issues, including anti-corruption cooperation. The United States has said it will not recognize elections held by Russian separatists in part of Ukraine, as it expressed concern that Moscow was trying to legitimize the results. State Department spokeswoman Jen Psaki said the recognition of the election results by the Russian government would further isolate the government of Russian President Vladimir Putin, as she was not specific what new measures might be taken to exert pressure on Moscow.
The United States deplores and does not recognize yesterday's so-called separatist elections in eastern Ukraine, nor do we recognize any of the leaders chosen in this illegal vote. We also welcome statements from the European Union, United Nations, France, Germany, and others rejecting these illegal and illegitimate actions. If Russia were to recognize the so-called elections, it would only serve to isolate it further. In terms of what it will mean for separatists, obviously we have a range of tools. I don't have any prediction on that in terms of what it will mean.
And lastly, gunfire and explosions were audible from Syrian-Turkish border region near Kobani, indicating little respite from intensive clashes between Kurdish forces backed by the Syrian rebels and Islamic State militants. Turkish residents gather on a hilltop near the border to watch the besieged Syrian town as smoke rose above rooftops of buildings. Iraqi Kurdish Peshmerga fighters and moderate Syrian rebels bombarded Islamic State positions in Kobani, but it was unclear if their arrival would turn the tide in the battle for town. Kobani has become a symbolic test of the U.S.-led coalition's ability to halt the advance of Islamic State, which has poured weapons and fighters into the assault of the town that has lasted more than a month. The battle has deflected attention from significant gains elsewhere in Syria by Islamic State, which has seized 2 gas fields within a week from President Bashar al-Assad's forces in the center of the country. And that's about the size of our package from the foreign news. Good morning, Nigeria continues.
All right, we'll move on to sports now, where CAF has named officials for the Nigeria-Congo fixture, and Morocco now has a Saturday deadline to make its stand known as host for the 2015 African Cup of Nations. Plus, FIFA speaks on Qatar 2022 World Cup.
All right, welcome here. Let's talk sport. World Football Governing Body FIFA showed little enthusiasm towards a proposal to stage the 2022 World Cup in April and May, saying on Monday that January, February, or November, December remain the most likely options for the tournaments in Qatar.
The World Soccer's governing body, FIFA, said there were medical concerns at holding the competition during any period between May and September, while Ramadan would affect preparations if the tournament were to be held in May. The World Players Union, FIFPro, also opposed a Summer World Cup, saying that it must avoid the hottest months at all costs, irrespective of what was suggested during the bidding procedure. Qatar were ranked bottom of the nations bidding to stage the World Cup by FIFA's own technical study group before the vote was taken in December 2010. However, Qatar saw rival bids from the United States, Australia, Japan and South Korea to become the first Arab state to stage the tournament. The award of the World Cup to the tiny Middle East Emirate has been the subject of an investigation by New York attorney Michael Garcia over the last 18 months, set up to establish whether any corruption was involved in the decision taken by the FIFA Executive Committee. Garcia's findings are now being studied by German judge Hans-Joachim Herkert, the head of FIFA's independent adjudicatory chamber, who is expected to issue his initial report later this month. FIFPro, whose General Secretary, Theo van Segelen, took part in the meeting, said it would not accept any decision which risked the players' health.
Morocco has been given until the weekend to decide whether they want to host next year's African Nations Cup finals after the Confederation of African Football CAF refused to consider a postponement of its showpiece tournaments over Ebola virus fears.
African football's governing body, CAF, says Morocco must make clear its position by Saturday after holding a meeting in Rabat between Prime Minister Abdelali Ben-Kirani and a delegation led by CAF President Issa Hayatou. Morocco wants the tournament postponed to June next year or January 2016 because of fears of the possible spread of the Ebola virus, which has caused almost 5,000 deaths in West Africa. But CAF stood firm on its determination not to change the scheduled dates of January 17 to February 8, despite the fact it now runs the risk of having no host for the 2015 finals. But it did open its doors for any other country interested in stepping in as emergency hosts, saying they also had until Saturday to decide. CAF also said it had strictly adhered to World Health Organization directives banning 3 countries from hosting preliminary matches and that no transmission of the Ebola virus had been reported in connection with a football match. It also said an expansive schedule did not permit it to change dates. Morocco last held the tournament in 1988 and won it in 1976 when it was staged in Ethiopia.
And CAF has named the officials that will take charge of Nigeria's crucial 2015 AFCON Group A qualifier against Congo.
The African Apex Football Governing Body has appointed Egyptian referee Gerd Zaglol Grisha as the man to be at the center when the Super Eagles meet the Red Devils on November 15. Grisha will be assisted by fellow Egyptian Tassan Habo El Sadat, who will be the assistant referee 1. Ahmed Abu Elela is the second assistant referee, while Mahmoud Hashur will serve as the reserve referee for the must-win game for the Eagles. Cameroonian Abubakar Alim Konate has been named as the match commissioner, as Moroccan Nassiri Abdelali will be security officer for the game. CAF has also disclosed that the crucial game will start at 3:30 p.m. Congo time, which will be 2:30 p.m. in Nigeria. The Super Eagles are on 4 points from 4 games in the ongoing qualifiers and need to get the maximum points to stand any chance of progressing to the 2015 African Cup of Nations. Nigeria are the defending champions of the competition after beating Burkina Faso 1-0 in the final of the last edition hosted by South Africa.
And that's a bit of sports this morning. The program continues very shortly.
It's midweek, and we go over now to Ngozi Chude for arts and entertainment.
Well, thank you very much and good morning. How you doing today? Well, I guess the modeling world are in high spirit as a Nigerian model won this year's Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week in Johannesburg, South Africa. Plus, the Road to Awareness fundraising campaign for 2.1 million people living in poverty in Africa by an Abuja-based NGO and UNICEF. Of course, theatre was used as the medium to drum up the advocacy, and Bosadeba will be our guide. However, let's quickly start from the Nigerian mothers who have proved their mentor. Nigerian model Favour Lucky is actually living up to her name of luck as she wins New Face of the Year at this year's Mercedes-Benz African Fashion International Awards. The event, which took place in Johannesburg, saw the 16-year-old beating formidable models from several other countries to clinch the coveted title. Favour, who is one of Joan Okorodudu's ISIS models, has been stunning the modeling world since 2012 when she won Next Supermodel title. The fashion event, which started on Wednesday, October 29, culminated with the Fashion Awards. The 4-day event featured designers from Kenya, Tanzania, Nigeria, Mozambique and Ghana, all showcasing their pieces to fashion lovers.
The adaptation of Dance of Death by Swedish dramatist August Strindberg was the stage play used in spreading the message. Produced and directed by Omoba Jerry Adesewo.
Have you any appetite?
Oh, yes. Let me have some food.
Okay. I'll ask Jenny.
Why Jenny? Jenny has left.
Oh, yes. Jenny has left.
Ring Christine instead, so I can get fresh water.
Dance of Death tells the story of a married couple who consider their 25 years of marriage to be the equivalent of hell. The play consists of 3 major characters. Alice, a former actress who sacrificed her career for secluded military life with Edgar, reveals on the occasion of their 25th wedding anniversary the veritable hell their marriage has been.
Alice, Alice, please. Alice, Alice.
The Whispers group were not left out as they entertained all, asking, what about the children?
Is a binding factor. Starwood and UNICEF have been in partnership since the 1980s, and we've been building together a strong legacy for children, both for education, for water, for immunization. And I think art, just like sports, brings us together, makes us happy, and inspires us to
Not a bad way to round off. Music is definitely food for the soul. So define your day with the right attitude. God bless.
All right, Ngozi, indeed, music is the food of the soul. And what attitude might that be? Anyway, I'll find out after the program. But this is where we'll say thank you once again for joining us on the program. It's been a very interesting 2 hours. I am Claire Delabo Abdurrazak. Tomorrow is Thursday, and we'll be able to have you join us again.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. It's been my pleasure being with you on the program today. Good Morning Nigeria, which came to you live on the network service on the NTA. The program returns tomorrow, as Claire said, at 7 o'clock in the morning. Do have a nice day.